Prefer the 80s and 90s Sports podcast where I talk about why I prefer the sports of the 80s and 90s to today. Today's topic is the sports world. There's been some statements made recently about specific sports and media, and I want to address. I've also created a new page on my Facebook page called I Prefer the 80s and 90s Sports Podcast to Today. So please join if you are on Facebook. And also check out Flam Flam Sports Travel if you're looking to go to a sporting event. Maybe I can help you get there, provide you lodging and flight. So in recent weeks, days, yesterday, a lot of stuff is happening in sports. A lot of people got a lot to say about things about sports. And so I'm going to hopefully try to clarify my position on sports. First of all, Jason Kidd last night went all in on an ESPN reporter and used some bad language and stuff like that and to get his point across. And he said some things that surprised me. He talked about how it's okay to talk positively about the world of sports today. And there's a lot of people who feel that way. That people in the sports media, we either do things based on race, we do things based on sport, we do things based on the person, we do things and say things based on the fact that we believe that negative stories sell and positive stories don't. Michael Jordan famously said recently or years ago that negativity sells. No one talks about the positive stuff. No one talks about the good things that athletes do or things that athletes say. And that's why a lot of athletes do things anonymously. When Chucky Mullins got injured back in the 80s, Charles Barkley sent a check for $20,000 to help his medical. Get it anonymously. And a lot of things that I do personally, there's some things I keep to myself and there's some things I tell the public about. So I'm kind of in two minds about it. But I completely agree. I completely agree with the notion that if it's negative, people appear to want to hear about it and that negativity sells. And so, excuse me. And so I think one of the biggest reasons why the media is negative all the time in sports today, as I believe that the athletes today tell us how great they are. Tell us that they are the greatest things that ever played the sports. They have an attitude that can't tell them anything because they like to say they don't care about what we think. And so why say something positive when they're saying the positive things? Every day I keep hearing somebody's the greatest this that ever did that. Or ESPN every day there's a statistic they keep coming up with for something that doesn't move the earth. But it's just a statistic to just sort of say something. And I find it funny. Jason Kidd was going on and on about how they were basically saying how last year the combination of Luka and Kyrie struggling. This year Dallas apparently is playing better together, and Luka has just come off a 40-point, 11 assists kind of game last night or something like that. And no one's reporting about that. Well, that's not true. But then again, that's the difference between today and yesterday. Today, in my opinion, NBA players are scoring 40 points a game, 30 points a game, and 11 assists a game every night. It's not an anomaly. And in a lot of ways, it's expected based upon the opponent because nobody plays defense. And so, as a sports person, we don't focus on the accomplishments because we don't think of it as difficult to do. We don't think of it as something that is special. When you got last season, I believe it was like 5 or 6 players finished the season averaging over 30 points a game. When I'm sure this season is going to probably be the same, if not more. It's not special. It's not noteworthy. It's not newsworthy. In fact, it's borderline boring. And it's hilarious to me because what this generation of athletes, coaches, media won't say out loud or don't fully understand is that the things that are happening today in sports are so much easier to do, not because they're better, but because the rules, but because all the games have changed because of the rules. I mean, I'm not going to say that people today aren't talented. I'm just saying that it is so much easier to play basketball today, football today, baseball today, hockey today than ever before. And hockey, the ice is more open, not much hitting. In baseball, well, every pitcher throws 100 miles an hour, and the question is, can you hit 100? And if you can hit 100, you're going to bat 270 or better because the rules are so that you can't put shifts on, and therefore, where you are known to hit the ball, you can hit the ball there. In basketball, they don't play defense. You have a 3-on-1 fast break, and instead of people going to the rim, people are fanning out to the perimeter to shoot a 3-point shot. All the offenses. How many times have you watched the games today and a guy is driving to the rim and looking like he's got a layup or a dunk, or he gets an offensive rebound at the rim, and instead of going strong back up, he kicks it out for a three, or he kicks it out to start the offense over again? The drive and kickback is the new thing in basketball. And in football, how much time do you got? Pass interference, they don't know how to call it. Holding, they don't know how to call it. Roughing the passer, are you serious? Illegal formation. There's so many dumb rules and different rules that make these games easy to play. I sit back and I say to myself, they say Tom Brady said something about the league recently. And I'm like, dude, they put a rule in for you because someone tackled you low. They put in the rules where you benefited the most because you made Julian Edelman, Wes Welker, superstar. Rob Gronkowski, superstar. Deion Branch, superstar. You made them superstars because you sat in the shotgun, and since you can't touch a receiver after 5 yards, threw the ball to the receiver in the slot at will. Kevin Falk, you made Kevin Falk a good football player with throwing the ball to him in the flat. So he shouldn't criticize anything about the rules because he, of all people, took advantage of it. And I say, can you imagine Jerry Rice playing football today? Well, you can't touch a receiver. Can you imagine Randy Moss? Look at the 1 year he was with the Patriots. 1 year. All the records he set in 1 year. Can you imagine Terrell Owens playing today? And it's not a question of, well, in our day we did this. No, I'm just saying the rules. Can you imagine Julius Erving playing today in the NBA? Well, he can't touch anybody. Where there's no one clogging the lanes. I don't want to say Michael Jordan because it's kind of obvious. But let's say somebody like Chris Mullin. Chris Mullin can shoot like no one else can. Can you imagine him playing in an NBA game today that essentially is the YMCA pickup game? Can you imagine Shaq running up and down the court? Everyone says, well, he would struggle on defense. He would make it up on offense. Patrick Ewing, rim running. Imagine Pearl Washington coming down on a fast break and throwing lobs to Ronnie Slikely, Derek Coleman, fictitiously to Patrick Ewing. Can you imagine what the games would be like? And so I think when the media asks questions that anger coaches, that anger the players, the media is trying to not say and ask the question that they want to ask. If I was at the podium, if I was in the pew, and I'm sitting there with the horde of media, and they're like, Richard, and they go, and I would say my first question would be to Jason Kidd: is it easier to play basketball today than it was when you played? Is it easier to do this today than it was in your day when you played? Is the expectation level? I mean, we're told every single day that these are the best players ever. And this guy's the GOAT of this, and this guy's the GOAT of that. Shouldn't we have an expectation that they play like what that word means? Or is those words just words? Should I have an expectation that if Luka is playing a game and he's got 35, 14, and 10, that I should expect him to get 35, 14, and 10 in today's game, considering that he is a top 5 player? That's the problem. And then you hear Alex Smith say, well, the quarterback play today is better than it ever has been, and this, that. Dude, it's like playing Madden football or practice football, and you can't touch the quarterback. And he said, well, their quarterbacks are getting hit. Their quarterbacks getting hit because the offensive line can't block for them. And that is what bothers me. That is why I do the show. That is why I have a page that says I prefer the sports of the 80s and 90s. Because to me, when I think of the way the games are supposed to be played, I think of the 80s and 90s. I'll even use tennis as an example. They don't serve and volley anymore. And one of the greatest players of all time, Jim Courier, said they don't serve and volley anymore because the return game today is too good. That's not why they don't serve and volley anymore. Nobody teaches it, and nobody knows how to. And the reason why nobody knows how to is because no one knows how to serve. They think to serve, you just get behind that line and hit it as hard as you can, and he'll miss it or she'll miss it. Instead of placing the serve somewhere where it forces a service error or forces a weak return, and then you smash it with a volley. You can't tell me that Martina Navratilova played, what, 20 years or more serving and volley? That Stefan Edberg played 15, 20 years serving and volleying? Pete Sampras played his whole career serving and volleying, and you're going to tell me that that could not work today? And you say, well, Serena, she did it, but she hated doing it. Or Boris Becker, he did it, but he hated doing it. But you know what? When Boris Becker won major tournaments, he served in volley. He didn't win from the baseline. And if he did, he won like one winning from the baseline. But when he was in trouble, as is every player who ever played tennis in the 80s and the 90s, when they were in trouble, they served and volleyed to try to bail them out. And the way you learn how to serve and volley is you learn how to hit proper serves. And so when I hear people say things about how great these athletes are today, why can't they do the simple things from the previous eras? When people talk about why, I'll speak for myself, why I think Tiger Woods is the greatest golfer to ever live, I say he's the greatest because he didn't put the ball in the fairway. So when he would score, sometimes he had to scramble. He had to hit shots in areas that were not good areas and found ways to score better than anyone I've ever seen. Jack was in the fairway a lot. Tom Watson was in the fairway a lot. Seve was in the fairway a lot. They might have been better strikers of the tee shot, but iron play, I don't know. I don't think so. Escaping, scrambling, scoring, and this generation of golf, that's how they play. They try to emulate him. They don't try to hit the ball not in the fairway. They try to hit it in the fairway so they can score. But the mentality is different where you have to figure out a plan of attack where you go in and you say, I'm probably going to miss the fairway here because this didn't fit my eye. If I put the ball in this spot here, I can still score. Instead of always playing from the fairway. It's that simple. But some of these players today can play from the fairway, and they do very well, and they win. Some of them don't have the scrambling ability, and therefore they're not as good as Tiger. But that's one of my biggest points of why I prefer the 80s and 90s sports to today. I feel that in the 80s and 90s in sports, we got to see sports played at its highest level consistently in all sports across the board. I'm not saying they didn't do that in the 60s. I'm not saying they didn't do that in the 70s. I'm not saying they don't do that today. But I'm just saying that we saw it in the 60s and 70s and said this person elevated it to a level, and we wanted to see this generation elevate that to a level. And we don't believe that has happened. I don't believe that has happened. I heard something this morning that made me laugh. Colin Cowherd saying, and I guess an old interview, why LeBron is better than Michael Jordan because he's a better 3-point shooter and he's a better dribbler, a better passer. And I laugh because I guarantee you nobody remembers that before Doug Collins got fired when he was Jordan's coach, that the last 24 games of Michael Jordan's of that season, Jordan played point guard for the Bulls. And Jordan's stat line after that 24 game period was something like 30 point something points a game, 11 assists a game, and 9 rebounds in a 24 game stretch. And then there was a stretch during that time period where he had a triple double in 10 of 11 games. And the game that he didn't have a triple double, he scored 40 points, 14 assists, and 9 rebounds, or something crazy like that. Missed it by one was rebound. And so people saying that LeBron was better because Michael couldn't pass. Well, apparently the first game he played point guard, he had 24, 15, and 11. So I don't get that whole nonsense. And the fact that LeBron is a better dribbler is crazy because I've never seen LeBron shake anybody. I've seen LeBron go through people, but I've never seen LeBron take the ball and shake and go past somebody. I think that's why he passes all the time when he's not taking the game winning shot because he can't create he can create his own shot, but not to the point where he is so open to shoot it that shooting is the better option. That's the difference between them. He could force a shot up to the rim and get fouled, but he has confidence he's not going to make free throws. Eichel, on the other hand, would not only drive past you, but beat the second defender coming over to help and get the shot off open. And that's the difference. One of the many differences. And so I don't get the expectation factor. And thus, that's why I do my show. Because I don't get the expectation factor of what today we expect. I mean, okay, Swiatek last year won all those matches in a row in tennis. Just total Steffi Graf domination. That's what she was equated to. And it wasn't that she was better than Steffi. She just got on the court and was quick about doing everything. Her tempo wasn't slowing down. She got behind the line, and before you know it, it was 4-love. Like Steffi. See? Like the people before them. And so, again, I don't get the gauge of what people are gauging sports on today for them to say that anything from today is better than the 80s and 90s. Like I said, the only athlete in the last 25 years who is a GOAT, in my opinion, is Usain Bolt. When you win 3 Olympics over over what's that 9 year period, 12 year period, and you win the same events, 9 wins. That's a mic drop. I don't say Serena because I think Steffi was better. Steffi was the more dominant, and Steffi has the one thing that Serena doesn't have, and that is she won the Grand Slam in the same year. Serena had 2 chances to do it, didn't get it done. They both got gold medals, much respect, but Steffi won it in the same year. Steffi won more tournaments overall. And Steffi chose to quit. She could have kept playing, but she chose to quit. Serena played until she was 40, until she became a mother and quit. And still now, Margaret Court still has the record for the most Grand Slams. But most people didn't see Margaret Court play, so we can't say what we can see. And Margaret Court apparently didn't play against the best players all the time because nobody could really afford to go play all the tournaments around the world back in the 60s and the 70s. But your eyes should be able to tell you things. And I think the reason why the questions are so negative is that there's an expectation level that we see and have. We say out loud, we wonder why the Clippers can't win. With all that talent, they say James Harden is the best one-on-one basketball player people have seen since Michael Jordan, since Allen Iverson, and they're 4-7 since they got him. I can't even put to words the frustration in watching them play. Some nights they lose because they're too small. They don't have enough big guys to rebound, but then rebounding is about effort. And so we have an expectation, and the players today don't like our expectation and don't like what we think and what we say. So therefore, they treat us with bad attitude. They're surly. The coaches are surly because they're tired of explaining it. But what they should be tired of is this entitlement attitude that the players today have. Maybe if the players today didn't have that entitlement attitude,